New York City, 6:12 a.m. A man in his early 30s stands inside a tiny kitchen in Queens wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and staring at a banking app on his phone. 5 years ago, that screen used to terrify him. Every notification felt like a threat. Every transaction felt personal. A declined card could ruin his entire week. Back then, he used to eat generic cereal from a plastic bag because the boxed kind cost $3 more. He remembers standing over the sink at sunrise eating it quickly before catching a crowded train to a job that drained him slowly, paycheck by paycheck. But this morning is different. The number on the screen says 1,042,218. He is officially a millionaire. And strangely, he has never felt more confused about who he is becoming. Because nobody tells you this part. Nobody explains what happens after you make the money. Not the financial part, the emotional part. The part where your bank account changes faster than your identity does. Today, we are talking about the hidden psychology of becoming wealthy in America. The part nobody posts on Instagram. The part financial gurus rarely mention, because building wealth does not just change your lifestyle. It changes your relationships, your ambition, your sense of self, and sometimes even your loneliness. The first thing wealth gives you is not luxury, it is silence. Not silence in the room, silence in your nervous system. No more panic every time your phone lights up. No more fear when you swipe your debit card at the grocery store. No more calculating whether gas can wait until Friday. For years, survival was running in the background of your brain like a hidden software program, consuming all your energy. People who grow up financially secure do not understand this. They think money buys convenience. But for millions of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, money buys emotional bandwidth. It buys sleep. It buys breathing room. It buys the ability to think beyond next Tuesday. That is why the first $1 million feels less like becoming rich and more like finally putting down a weight you did not realize you were carrying every hour of every day. And then something strange happens. You wake up one morning and there is no emergency, no overdue notice, no crisis. No disaster waiting around the corner, just quiet. And after years of chaos, quiet almost feels uncomfortable, because survival stress became part of your identity. At first, the changes are subtle. You go out to dinner with old friends, the bill comes, you grab it automatically, not to impress anyone, not for status. You just remember what it felt like when $30 mattered. But then, you notice something. The energy shifts, somebody makes a joke. Must be nice. Everyone laughs. But underneath the laugh is something else. Distance. Because money changes conversations even when nobody mentions money directly. Your cousin suddenly talks about his car problems every time you see him. Your friend casually brings up credit card debt at dinner. A coworker jokes about how you are doing Wall Street numbers now. Nobody asks directly, but everybody notices. And this is where wealth becomes psychologically complicated. Because you want to help. You remember exactly what financial stress feels like. You remember sitting awake at 2:09 a.m. calculating bills like a human spreadsheet. You remember pretending everything was fine because admitting you were struggling felt humiliating. So you help. You pay for repairs. You send money quietly. You cover medical bills. You lend without expecting repayment. And sometimes it brings people closer. But sometimes it does the opposite. Because money between people is never just math. Money carries pride, shame, power, status, dependency. A transaction can accidentally create emotional debt, and emotional debt is much heavier than financial debt. Here is something almost nobody admits publicly. Many self-made millionaires still feel broke emotionally. Not financially, emotionally. Because once you spend years surviving instability, your brain becomes trained to expect loss. You do not trust success fully. You prepare for collapse, even during prosperity. This is why some wealthy people obsessively check their investment accounts. Why they overwork despite already being financially independent. Why they struggle to relax during vacations. Why they feel guilty spending money they can absolutely afford. Scarcity leaves fingerprints on the nervous system, and those fingerprints remain long after the bank account changes. A person who inherited wealth often sees money as a tool, A person who fought for wealth often sees money as protection. That difference changes everything. One spends from abundance, the other saves from memory. For most of your life, being broke shaped your personality. It made you resourceful, funny, observant, disciplined, creative. You learned how to stretch $20 for a week, how to negotiate, how to survive embarrassment, how to read people quickly, how to adapt. Struggle became your training ground, but then one day the struggle disappears. And suddenly you have a strange question. Who are you without the pressure? Because survival gave your life urgency. Now you need purpose instead. And purpose is harder, a lot harder. Working for survival is simple. The rent is due, the lights need to stay on. You move. But working for meaning, that requires internal discipline. Nobody talks enough about this. Financial freedom sounds like the end of stress. Sometimes it is actually the beginning of existential questions. What do you want now? What matters now? Who are you building for now? Without survival fear pushing you forward, you must build motivation from vision instead of desperation. And that transition changes people deeply. The internet loves luxury, private jets, penthouse apartments, Rolex watches, crypto millions, sports cars. But wealth becomes dangerous the moment it turns into performance. Because lifestyle inflation is one of the fastest ways to destroy financial freedom. The average American millionaire does not look rich. That is the irony. Most real wealth in America is quiet. Index funds, business equity, real estate cash flow, long-term investing, tax-efficient assets, compounding returns. Actual millionaires often drive normal cars longer than expected. Why? Because wealthy people understand one critical concept. Cash flow matters more than appearances. Poor people buy liabilities to look rich, rich people buy assets that produce income. That difference compounds for decades. And social media has completely distorted how Americans understand wealth. People see consumption and assume success. But real financial independence usually looks boring. Consistency, discipline, patience, delayed gratification, not viral luxury. Eventually, almost every investor experiences this moment. A major mistake. Maybe it is stocks, maybe real estate, maybe crypto, maybe a startup investment. You lose money, real money. Enough to hurt emotionally, enough to replay the decision in your head for weeks. And here is the critical difference between broke thinking and wealthy thinking. Broke thinking sees failure as identity. Wealthy thinking sees failure as data. That shift changes everything. Financially successful people are not people who never lose. They are people who survive losses without emotionally collapsing. Because investing is not about perfection, it is about endurance. The stock market rewards emotional stability more than intelligence. The real challenge is behavioral finance. Can you stay rational during volatility? Can you avoid panic selling? Can you think long-term while everyone else reacts emotionally? Because wealth is often less about high income and more about emotional consistency over time. This part is uncomfortable, but important. Many people think poor financial decisions come from laziness. Usually they come from exhaustion. Financial stress destroys cognitive performance. When somebody is constantly worried about rent, debt, inflation, healthcare, gas prices, or groceries, their brain narrows into short-term survival mode. That is not weakness. That is neuroscience. Scarcity reduces long-term planning ability. This is why financial education alone is not enough. People also need margin, breathing room, stability, energy. Because it is very difficult to think 10 years ahead when you are worried about next week. This is also why escaping poverty often feels emotionally impossible before it feels mathematically possible. You have to believe in a future your current environment cannot yet prove exists. And that belief is psychologically exhausting. People always ask successful individuals the same question. What is the secret? They expect a hack, a shortcut, a hidden investing strategy. Usually the truth is less exciting. Wealth is often built through extremely repetitive behaviors executed consistently over long periods of time. Budgeting, investing monthly, avoiding high-interest debt, increasing income, building valuable skills, protecting energy, learning patience, understanding compound interest, making fewer emotional financial decisions. That is it. The reason this feels disappointing is because humans love dramatic transformations. But wealth creation is usually slow, very slow, then suddenly fast. Compounding feels invisible until it becomes undeniable. And the hardest part is staying disciplined during the invisible stage. Because during the beginning, nobody claps for you. Nobody sees the sacrifice, nobody notices the consistency, but years later, everyone notices the results. 3 years after becoming wealthy, you visit your parents. Same kitchen, same magnets on the refrigerator, same sunlight through the window. Your father tells an old story again. Your mother laughs at the same part she always laughs at. And suddenly you realize something important. The money changed your lifestyle, but it did not create the moments that matter most. Because the people who truly loved you existed before the success, before the investment portfolio, before the 7 figures, before the financial freedom. They loved you during the plastic bag cereal years, during the overdraft years, during the face-down bills years. And that realization changes your relationship with wealth forever. Because eventually you understand. Money solves money problems. It does not solve human problems. It cannot purchase meaning. It cannot buy belonging. It cannot guarantee peace. But used wisely, it can buy time. And time is the most valuable asset of all. Becoming a millionaire is not the ending people imagine. It is not a movie scene where everything suddenly becomes perfect. It is quieter than that. More psychological, more human. You carry parts of your old life into your new one. The struggle stays with you, but so does the resilience it built. And maybe that is the real definition of wealth. Not having enough money to impress strangers. Having enough freedom to finally breathe. If this video connected with you, subscribe for more deep dive finance psychology content about money, investing, wealth building, and the hidden emotional side of financial success. And remember, the goal is not just to make more money. The goal is to build a life where money no longer controls your peace.